Caitlin, let me start with you because Judge Cannon already rejecting one of Trump's motions. So what more can you tell us about the hearing today? That hearing where, of course, he chose to be in person.
Well, Aaron, there was no delay today from Judge Cannon in her decision to reject one of Trump's arguments. But what is happening here in this case is Trump is putting all of his defense arguments before the judge, asking her to dismiss the case. She's looking at those one by one. Today, she looked at 2 of 9 of those arguments that he and his co-defendants are making, all different arguments about why they think the case should be dismissed. And we've gotten one ruling. That was after he argued that the law was too vague around national defense secrets. She said, that's not something that I'm going to decide. That might be something you may want to argue to a jury later, or we could look at later on and argue in this case. But I'm not dismissing the case right now. There still is another argument that was made in court today about Donald Trump keeping the records that were removed from the White House and that he took to Mar-a-Lago and kept after he left the presidency, that those were his personal records. Judge Aileen Cannon seemed pretty skeptical of that, but now we wait to see exactly what she will do. She's been very cautious not to tip her hand in court, though she did a bit today. She did shed some skepticism toward Trump and his lawyers for what they were arguing today. But everyone here in this case, it's very clear that there's a lot of work to do. There's a long road ahead of them. They've spent hours and hours in court together. Trump himself in court seems to be quite comfortable chatting with his lawyers, listening. Our reporters and producers in the room today even caught some people maybe nodding off as this hearing dragged on well into the afternoon. But there are many, many hours ahead and many rulings to come from Judge Aileen Cannon before we get to a trial.
Before we get to a trial, or I guess even a known trial date. All right, Caitlin Polantz, thank you so much. Caitlin at that courthouse today. And I want to go now to Evan Perez because he is closely following the late developments I mentioned in the Trump hush money case, that first criminal case that was scheduled to start in 2 weeks, Evan. And now maybe not for another 30 days.
Yeah, at least 30 days. Aaron, it's almost certain that the judge is going to delay this trial because now the district attorney, Alvin Bragg, is saying that they are okay with delaying this by at least 30 days, up to 30 days. The Trump team had asked for a 90-day delay because they said of various discovery problems. This is the whole principle that the prosecution has a duty to turn over all documents that are relevant to trial in order for the defense to be able to prepare for trial. Of course, so what has happened, according to the district attorney, is that just yesterday they received about 31,000 pages of documents from the Justice Department that the defense had requested. Now, these were documents, we don't know exactly what these documents are, but we know that these were documents that the defense said that they had requested from the Justice Department because, as you know, the Justice Department had investigated these allegations of Trump paying hush money ahead of the 2016 election. They had looked at it in the Trump administration and also looked at it in the Biden administration and declined to prosecute. So those documents were under a subpoena from the defense, and some of those documents only came in yesterday. Here's the thing. According to this filing from the district attorney, there may be more documents that may be coming in. So the issue now becomes how long this judge delays this trial. As you pointed out, this was supposed to start in less than 2 weeks. And so the question is, does he go with 30 days? Does he go all the way to 90 days, which is what Trump is asking, or somewhere in between? Aaron?
All right. Thank you very much, Evan Perez in Washington. And out front now, the former Trump White House lawyer, Ty Cobb. So, Ty, obviously, every development is significant in terms of the ripple effect it could have. And Judge Cannon, Aileen Cannon, rejecting one of Trump's key motions to dismiss the case today. But you think that it may still have been a good day for Trump. Explain how come.
Because it was a day. And, delay is his whole objective. Every day counts. The fact that she denied the motion is really sort of inconsequential in my view because, all 9 motions to dismiss are frivolous. It wouldn't take most judges a week to, decisively rule on all of them. Not sure why argument is even required. The positions that Trump's lawyers have taken are so absurd. But I think, it's good that today she came to court prepared for a change. She actually issued a ruling on one of the motions that was argued, but not the other. The other motion, frankly, is an easier motion to dismiss, for the court to dismiss and say that Trump's wrong, because it's even more absurd than the one that she did dismiss today on the vagueness issue. So, yeah, anything that slows things down, and she just doesn't have this on a schedule that is likely to get the case resolved before or even to trial before the election. And I think sort of any trial date that she ultimately sets, even if she goes with the defendant's suggested trial date in August over the Smith trial date, a month or so earlier, the reality is that date will move too. This case is not going to go to trial before the election, and I think everything that she has done to date ensures that.
Which is an incredible bottom line when you think about it. And I think the context is so important of what you're saying, that those 9 motions, as you see them, are frivolous, that she could rule on them. You don't need every time to have a hearing and a date and an argument in court. And yet that is what's happened. Kaitlan Polantz described Aileen Cannon as skeptical of the notion that Trump had the power to designate records as personal and take them with him to Mar-a-Lago when his presidency ended. But she did say that could be a, quote, forceful trial defense. So it's sort of unclear where she stood, at least from that. Is there any merit to that argument?
None. And in fact, at 30,000 feet, you have to ask yourself, how would that ever get in front of the jury? The only way for that to get in front of the jury, the argument that Trump had designated the documents as personal to himself, is if Trump testifies. And Trump's never going to testify. I mean, he would get eviscerated. So, in the absence of any evidence that supports a legal argument, you can't make the argument. The arguments have to be based on the evidence and based on the facts and based on the jury instructions, relevant to the jury instructions. And there is no, jury instruction that says, under the PRA, the Public Records Act, that a president can designate things personal to himself if he so decides. That's not in the law. That's not in the statute. It's just sort of a silly argument, and it has no legal support.
I remember the day when he's like, I just have to sort of think about it, and it is. So the Alvin Bragg situation, obviously, Trump's team had asked for 90 days of a delay. Alvin Bragg came out and is agreeing in a sense that a delay is necessary, right? Clearly, saying 30 days, that they would go with 30 days. What does this mean?
Well, so what it means for sure is that the case will be delayed. Judge Merchant is not going to risk being reversed on, forcing, the trial to date earlier than both the prosecution and the defense agree is appropriate. I think it also means that, the DA's office just has badly managed this case. These documents, have been out there for 2 years, ever since the Southern District decided not to pursue charges against the former president after having prosecuted Mike Cohen. Keep in mind that both the SEC and the Southern District concluded that this case, required no action, and they both passed on it. And then Bragg's team came up with this tortured, misdemeanor attached to a federal crime theory that has no precedent that supports it. And for a case that, even if it ever gets to trial, is going to be inconsequential to Trump. Trump's not going to go to jail in this case. It's $130,000 a first offense under the New York guidelines. That's not worthy of any jail time, and it'll be on appeal when if he gets elected. It'll be on appeal during that time, and it wouldn't be enforceable for 4 more years. So it's sort of an unusual case to gum up the works, and moving it back, of course, screws up other timelines, like the potential for either the classified documents case or the January 6th case to get to trial.
All right. Well, Ty Cobb, thank you very much.